In today's class, we are going to talk about the basics of cultural criticism and a proponent of cultural criticism, formalism, and structuralism, Mikhail Bakhtin. He is concerned with formalism, structuralism, as well as cultural criticism. So these are the two topics that we are going to discuss in today's class. So I'm going to start with the cultural criticism. So cultural criticism, many times you may have cultural programs in your schools and colleges. I would just like to connect these things with your daily life so that it can be a better understanding to you. So in those cultural programs, we generally present the culture where the program is taking place, or the culture of different states. So you will find that in different cultural programs, different cultures are presented by the different actors. So those cultural studies, how you take those cultures, how you represent those cultures. So those actors who are performing the art of the culture, they are actually the critics. In what sense they are taking those cultures, and what sense they are presenting to the people who are going to watch them. So cultural studies is a very broader sense, because culture is concerned in every aspect, whether it's in art, it's philosophy, it's literature, economics, politics, everywhere culture is there. So there has been a very close contrast between the tradition by T.S. Eliot and the culture. These are the two closely related meanings. So we need to understand the meaning of the tradition and the culture. Can anyone explain what is the literal meaning of these two terms, tradition and culture? Anyone?
The tradition means the historical things which are going on. We take the things from history, that is tradition, which is told by the T.S. Eliot, like in his essay, Tradition and Individual. And cultural is mostly like similar traditional, because cultural is also the things which are happening in our culture. We're taking things from our historical things, or the things which we follow in different societies.
Culture is like customs, lifestyles, and backgrounds that a particular society follows. Isn't it? Culture is related to a particular society, whereas tradition is even broader term, which shows a particular culture which has been passed from generation to generation. So every society has its own culture. And nowadays, there is a term called pop culture. That means popular culture. The culture which has been accepted by the majority of the society is called pop culture. So all these things that we are going to discuss in the cultural criticism. So I'm going to start the class. Cultural criticism is a critical lens through which any text can be viewed. Before this, we have discussed so many theories, and using those theories, we can critically analyze any work. So this is the another lens through which we can analyze any work. In different theories, our focus kept on shifting. Some of the theories was focused on the text, some of the theories was focused on the reader, some of the theories was focused on the historical context. Now, this theory is based on the cultural context, that we need to understand the culture inside the work, what culture they are following. they belong to a society that follows a particular culture. So what is that culture? Because every society has its own culture. This form of criticism examines how different religions, ethnicities, class identifications, political beliefs and views class identification, we have to identify the characters whether they belong to white race or black race. Political beliefs and views. What are the political beliefs of the characters represented? So these are the ways in which a text can be interpreted. And if we are interpreting from this point of view, then it is called cultural criticism. Cultural criticism examines and put more focus on the people who are marginalized, who are not having any political power, and they are marginalized, they are living beyond the geographical areas of their own right. The best example I can give of the marginalized people is the Rohingya people. अभी जो रोहिंग्या घूम रहे थे चारों तरफ, they were finding a place to resist. So they are people called marginalized people. So cultural criticism has to pay more focus on the marginalized people who are not the part of any dominant culture. There are 4 common assumptions in the use of cultural criticism as a lens for understanding this literature. These 4 assumptions are very, very important. The first one, we have to find the ethnicity, religious belief, social class, whether they belong to lower class, middle class, upper class, like the 3 class divided by Matthew Arnold. Can you name all the 3 class divided by Arnold?
Sir, barbarians, Philistines, and populace.
Philistines and populace.
And populace. Very well. So he divided the society into 3 classes. That is barbarians, Philistines, and populace. So we have to find out कि they belong to which class. So by finding this aspect, we can interpret the text from cultural point of view. There are many researchers who do the research, who interpret any novel from this cultural point of view. And this is called the theoretical aspects of any research. So whenever you are going to do any research, you have to prove that thing from the theoretical point of view. कि हमारी theory ये कह रही है और ये text में भी यही है, तो this is proved. The next assumption is the emphasis is on the diversity of approach and the subject matter. Cultural criticism is not the only means of understanding ourselves and our art. So there are diversity of approaches. Apart from cultural, there are other theoretical approaches as well. So as I said, that cultural criticism is a broader term. So we have to look from others' perspective, other theoretical views also. It is an examination or exploration of the relationship between a dominant culture and a dominated culture. There are few cultures which are eradicating from our society, जो विलुप्त हो रहे हैं culture. So they are called the dominated culture. And some of the Western cultures are coming in India. So they are the dominant cultures. So we have to explore the relationship between a dominant culture and a dominated culture. When looking at a text through the perspective of marginalized people, the new understandings emerge. So we have to pay more focus on the characters who are marginalized. Like in The Tempest, who is the marginalized character?
So Caliban.
Caliban. Very right. So that type of characters had to be found out from the cultural point of view. The next is Speaking with Hands by Luis Rodriguez. This is a poem written by Luis Rodriguez. The title of the poem is Speaking with Hands. So this is a poem where there is talking of marginalization. Now we can understand how poem that is written from the cultural point of view. अभी तक हम criticism की बात करते हैं, but a poem or a work can be written from a perspective of marginalized. So poem reads like, there were no markets in Vats. Vats is the name of the city. So there were no markets in Vats. There were these small corner stores we called markets, who charged more money for cheaper goods than what existed in other parts of town. The owners were often thieves in white coats, who talked to you like animals, who knew you had no options, who knew Vats was the preferred landfill of the city. So this is a very long poem. So I have taken only 2 stanzas just to explain how a poem is written in the sense of marginalization. The oppressed people. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So cultural critics want to make the term culture refer to popular culture or pop culture or high culture, to the culture associated with the classical culture. Classical means the ancient culture. So they bring a difference between the classical culture and the contemporary culture. And they call contemporary culture as the popular culture or the pop culture. They want to break down the boundary between high and low. As we are talking about the class system, ethnicity. So definitely where there is a class system, there has to be 2 categories. One is the high graded people and the low graded people. So this cultural criticism actually came out of the Marxist theory. So Marxism was also talking about the division and the class system, hierarchy system. So cultural criticism is totally based on Marxist theory. And they want to dismantle the hierarchy that of distinction implies. So the hierarchy system, according to Karl Marx, is that 5% people will always be on the top and 70% people will always be at the bottom. So he has created a hierarchy triangle. So cultural criticism is also talking about dismantling that hierarchy system. Everyone should be counted and seen from the same perspective. सबको एक ही नजर से देखना है. You also want to discover the political reasons why a certain kind of aesthetic product is more valued than others. Political perspective is also required to look from the cultural criticism, from the perspective of cultural criticism. Raymond Williams, who is known as the father of cultural criticism, works laid the foundation for the field of cultural studies and the cultural materialist approach. He coined 2 terms. One is cultural criticism and the other is cultural materialism. So he saw the work from the 2 perspectives. So it is also mandatory for us to understand what is the difference between cultural criticism and cultural materialism. These 2 are the 2 different lenses, but they are the branch of the same tree. The concept of cultural criticism emerged with the essay The Idea of Culture, which resulted in the widely successful book Culture and Society by Raymond Williams, published in 1958. And this book was completely influenced by the works of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, who published their book in 1848. So they were completely influenced by Marxism. Then what is cultural materialism? कल्चरल क्रिटिसिज्म तो समझ में आ गया कि ये चीजें से आप देखो तो कल्चरल क्रिटिसिज्म है, बट व्हाट इज कल्चरल मटेरियलिज्म? कल्चरल मटेरियलिज्म सेज मटेरियल मींस क्या है? मटेरियल मींस मनी. सो हाउ द पावर ऑफ मनी कैन चेंज द कल्चर. So Raymond Williams says that the postmodern culture or the contemporary culture, जो अभी कल्चर हमारा चल रहा है, that is a dominated culture by materialistic culture. हर चीज में money involved है, and that money is causing the culture to get changed. The best example is slaughtering of the cows and use it as a beef, as a meat for eating. Earlier, this culture was not existing, but because of the scarcity of food and lots of economical changes, the culture is degrading, or you can say changing day by day. So cultural materialism is a theory which views culture as a productive process, focusing on art such as literature. It focuses on हम आर्ट को यूज करके अपने कल्चर को कैसे चेंज कर रहे हैं. जो हमारा कल्चर ने, कुछ कल्चर ने हमें आर्ट दिया है, वी आर यूजिंग दैट आर्ट एज अ मटेरियल. So this term was coined by again Raymond Williams in his book Marxism and Literature in 1977. Although this term cultural materialism was popularized by Jonathan Dollimore and Alan Seinfeld in their 1994 book Political Shakespeare. So this is the origin of cultural materialism. Within this culture, art is translated as a social use of material. The art which is existing as a part of culture, it is used as a material means of production. उस आर्ट को हम अपने फायदे के लिए, अपने पैसे बनाने के लिए, we are using as a means of production. The best example is many tourist places which are having the existence of culturalism. Like I can say Qutub Minar, Lal Killa, Char Minar. There are so many cultural existence, and the government is using those cultures as a means of production. अब उन cultural art से हम पैसा कैसे बनाएं? So that is called cultural materialism. So we are using the art as a material for the means of production of money. I hope the definition is clear so that I can go ahead.
Sir, museum also.
Pardon?
Museum, sir. Museum also.
Yes, yes. If anything is there in the museum which is related to culture,
yes, sir,
जो हमारे कल्चर को रिप्रेजेंट कर रहा है, तो डेफिनेटली इट इज ऑल्सो अ पार्ट ऑफ कल्चरल मटेरियलिज्म. तो ये जो हमारा पॉपुलर कल्चर है, आजकल का जो पोस्ट मॉडर्न कल्चर है, इट इज टोटली बेस्ड ऑन कल्चरल मटेरियलिज्म. जो भी हमारे कल्चरल चीजें हैं, उससे कितना ज्यादा से ज्यादा पैसा बनाया जा सके, तो दिस इज कॉल्ड कल्चरल मटेरियलिज्म.
गवर्नमेंट को ही फायदा हो रहा है सर, कोई मटेरियलिज्म बढ़ा ही रही है ऐसे तो, है ना?
डेफिनेटली.
और जो कल्चरल क्रिटिसिज्म है वो क्लियर नहीं हुआ सर, उसमें क्या कॉन्सेप्ट था?
कल्चरल क्रिटिसिज्म में क्या था, जो भी चीजें रिलेटेड है कल्चर से, उसको किस व्यू से देखना है. मटेरियलिज्म में किस व्यू से देखना है? मटेरियलिस्टिक व्यू से देखना है कि उस किस कल्चर से कितना पैसा कमाया जा रहा है. एक ये व्यू हो गया. और कल्चरल में क्या था कि थोड़ा डिफरेंट व्यू था कि उसमें आपको एथनिसिटी, जो लोअर एथनिसिटी ग्रुप है, जो मार्जिनलाइज्ड लोग हैं, जिनका कोई पॉलिटिकल कंट्रोल नहीं है, वोटिंग राइट्स नहीं है, जैसे हमारे रोहिंग्या मुसलमान थे, वो अपने घर ढूंढने के लिए इधर उधर घूम रहे थे, दे वर नॉट हैविंग एनी पॉलिटिकल राइट.
लो क्लास पीपल्स,
suppressed people, oppressed people.
उन्हीं के
ये
लिए
एक-
बोला गया है ये,
Pardon?
सिर्फ उनको ही फोकस करके बोला गया है सर, मार्जिनलाइज्ड.
हाँ, उनको फोकस करके बोला गया है, बट इट इज अ ब्रॉडर टर्म. ये एक टर्म था, बट ब्रॉडर टर्म में हम ये समझ सकते हैं कि कोई भी कल्चर हो जो हमसे रिलेटेड हो, एवरीवेयर वी आर रिलेटेड टू कल्चर, एंड एवरी ग्रुप ऑफ पीपल, एवरी एथनिसिटी हैज इट्स ओन कल्चर. हर एक आदमी का अपना कल्चर होता है. तो जब हम कल्चरल क्रिटिसिज्म के व्यू से किसी वर्क को पढ़ रहे होते हैं, तो हमें ये देखना है कि इसके जो कैरेक्टर्स हैं वो कौन सा कल्चर फॉलो कर रहे हैं.
अच्छा, ओके.
तो यूजिंग दोज बुक्स वी कैन अंडरस्टैंड द कल्चर कि शेक्सपियर के टाइम का कल्चर क्या था, लोग कैसे रहते थे, क्या खाते थे, कैसे क्या पहनते थे. वी कैन फाइंड द कल्चर इनसाइड द बुक.
The text, okay. Inside the text, we can find the culture of that time, that
Yes.
ages, Victorians and Shakespeareans. Okay.
बिल्कुल. तो दोनों एक ही ब्रांच हैं, एक ही ट्री के ब्रांच हैं, कल्चरल मटेरियलिज्म एंड कल्चरल क्रिटिसिज्म, बट फोकस थोड़ा चेंज हो जा रहा है.
इसमें मनी फोकस
Yes.
हो रहा है और उसमें कल्चर हो रहा है.
यस, इसमें मटेरियलिस्टिक अप्रोच आ रहा है.
Thank you, sir. Now got it. Thank you.
So the concept of literature is seen as a social development, which according to Raymond Williams is only truly developed between 18th and 19th century within our culture. जो रेमंड विलियम ने कहा कि जो 18th and 19th century में था, there was a social development of literature. So these literatures of 18th and 19th century best represents the cultural materialism. अगर हमें cultural materialism देखना है तो 18th and 19th century के वर्क में हमें ढूंढना चाहिए. The critic explains in his essay, culture is ordinary. Raymond Williams explains in his essay entitled Culture is Ordinary. He says that a culture is a whole way of life, and the arts are part of social organization, which economic change clearly radically affects. He says that the economic development of a particular country or a particular class of people changes the culture. अगर कोई अमीर हो गया तो उसका कल्चर चेंज हो जाता है. It is not only related to a society, even we can find in our home. If some poor people becomes a rich man, his culture inside the family is going to completely change. So it is true that cultural materialism has always been embedded in our society. However, it only became more widespread with the emergence of industrialization. Industrialization was there all over the world from 16th century to 19th century. And the bourgeois, who are the bourgeois?
Middle class, sir.
Middle class people.
Dominant class.
Capitalist.
Or we can say the dominant class people,
Capitalist.
capitalistic. So this bourgeois society was created by a capitalistic mode of production, and they are having the control over the society. So once they are in power, they are the capitalists, they are the economists. So definitely they are controlling the culture. So this is how we can understand the cultural materialism. Culture is a process of surplus value, which will always be controlled by social and economic factors. However, without it, our society will never develop. Materialism has to be there. Production of money is the requirement for the development of a society. But if it is done by the government to use the art as a production, that is the focus where we have to put. So as I said that this cultural materialism was propagated by Jonathan Dollimore and Alan Sinfield. These are the two famous cultural materialists. They wrote a book called Political Shakespeare. Even the title of this book is very important. Political Shakespeare, published in 1994. They had considerable influence in the development of this movement, and their book is considered to be a masterpiece in this text. They identified 4 characteristics of cultural materialism, and these characteristics are very, very important. The first is the historical context. As we found in the new historicism that the entire focus was on the historical context, but cultural materialism says that no, we have to focus on 4 things, not only historical context. Historical context is one, so that we can do a comparative study. ये historical context में क्या था और अभी क्या है. So we can find the difference in the culture. The second is close textual analysis. This we found in the new criticism, close reading of the text. So to find out all the things, definitely कोई भी चीज हमें ढूंढनी है तो close reading तो करनी पड़ेगी, close textual analysis. You can find कि उन्हें सारे criticism को mix कर दिया. That is political analysis, political commitment. How politics has influenced a particular work. Power politics. We have to find the power politics. And theoretical methods. Other theoretical methods, apart from cultural materialism, what are the other theoretical aspects present in the work? Like structuralism, post-deconstruction, post-structuralism. Those aspects.
Voice problem.
Okay, I'll reconnect. This point is clear. What are the 4 characteristics of cultural materialism?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Please continue, sir. Please, now voice is clear, sir.
Voice is clear?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Oh.
sir.
Okay, fine. So these 4 contexts we must understand, we must remember. ये 4 कॉन्टेक्स्ट कौन-कौन से हैं जिसमें एलन सिंगफील्ड और डॉलीमोर ने बोला था कि ये चारों कॉन्टेक्स्ट को हमें एनालिसिस करना है. The doctrine of materialism started and developed from the work of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. They both were the friends, and they presented an evolutionary model of societies based on the materialistic perspective. They argued that societies go through several stages. Society has to change. So the society go through several stages from tribal to feudal to capitalism and then communism. So this is how a society is formed. Initially, the societies were formed by the tribals who are living in the different parts of the different places. Then feudalism, then the capitalism, and finally the communism, which was governed by Marxism. So cultural materialists identify 3 levels of social system that constitute a universal pattern. This 3 levels of social system is again very important. Cultural materialists means the critics of the cultural materialism, they identified 3 levels of social system. Means the social system is divided between 3 parts. First is infrastructure, structure, and superstructure. These are the 3 levels of social system. You can note it down. This is very important. The social system can be divided into 3 parts that governs us. The first one is infrastructure.
Structure and superstructure.
Okay, so infrastructure word से ही पता चल रहा है. It is the basis of all the other levels. It includes the basic needs, roti, kapda, makan. So this is the infrastructure. Basic needs met and how it interacts with the local environment. So in society, there has to be an infrastructure. Second is structure. Structure means economic structure, social structure, political structure. This is called the structure. So this is also a part of society. And the third is superstructure. That is the ideology. What ideology is followed by a particular society. Ideology and symbolism comes under superstructure. So this point is very, very important. And I hope this point is clear to everyone.
Yes, sir.
So cultural materialists like Marvin Harris is one of the famous cultural materialists, Marvin Harris. He contended that infrastructure is the most critical aspect because it's talking about the basic need of human beings. So infrastructure is the most critical aspect as it is here where the interaction between culture and environment occurs. Because it is talking about the basic needs and its relationship with the environment. जो हमारा local environment है, whether it is capable of fulfilling the basic needs. So this point is again important. Who said that infrastructure is the most critical aspect? It is by materialist Marvin Harris. All three of the levels are interrelated so that changes in the infrastructure results in the change in the structure and superstructure. So if we want to change the structure and the superstructure, first of all, we need to change the infrastructure. पहले में basic need पूरी करनी है. If basic needs are fulfilled, then only we can think of ideology or economic or social development. Although the changes might not be immediate, it may take the time, but first focus should be on the infrastructure. Cultural materialists do not disclaim that change in the structure and superstructure cannot occur without first change in infrastructure. They do, however, claim that if change in those structures is not compatible with the existing infrastructure, the change is not likely to become set within the given period. Means it is not mandatory. ऐसा नहीं है कि आपको infrastructure change करना ही करना है. बिना infrastructure change किए आपका structure और superstructure change नहीं हो सकता है. Rather, they said that if change in the structure is not compatible with the infrastructure, तो हमारा जो बेसिक नीड्स है वो पूरा नहीं होगा. ऐसा नहीं कि हम डायरेक्ट स्ट्रक्चर पे फोकस कर दें, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को बिल्कुल छोड़ दें. So the Birmingham School of Cultural Studies was founded by Richard Hoggard in 1964. Very, very important. Stuart Hall became one of the main proponents of the reception theory and developed the Hall's theory of encoding and decoding. Reception theory means how a work is received by the reader. And he developed a theory called encoding and decoding. Encoding means writing by the author, and decoding how readers decode those meanings. So it is similar to the other theories that we have studied in the reader response theory. So he has used some different terms, encoding and decoding. So this approach to textual analysis focuses on the scope of negotiation and opposition on the part of the audience. Means whether while decoding they are able to negotiate with the text or they are in opposite of the text. This theory first appeared in encoding and decoding in the television discourse. So where the term appeared is again very important. Encoding and decoding in the television discourse, published in 1970.
Recording, sir.
Yeah, it's on. So according to Stuart Hall, a message must be perceived as meaningful discourse by the reader or the receiver and be meaningful before it has an effect or a use or satisfies a need. So it is totally depends upon how it is encoded and how it is decoded. So encoding and decoding is very important part. So he provided the 4 codes for encoding and decoding model of communication. So let's see what are the 4 codes. The first way of encoding is the dominant or the hegemonic code. This is also called a dominant code or hegemonic code. This is the code where the encoder expects the decoder to recognize and decode. When the viewer takes the connotated meaning, the emotional meaning of the author full and straight and decodes the message in terms of the reference code in which it has been coded, it operates inside the dominant code. Means if the author intention is completely decoded by the reader, the same emotion has been interpreted, then it is called the dominant code or hegemonic code. What are the 4 codes? These are again very important. The second way of encoding is the professional code. First one, dominant code. Second one, professional code. Finally, note these all codes. What are the codes he is using to encode the meaning? It operates in tandem with the dominant code. It serves to reproduce the dominant definitions precisely by bracketing the hegemonic quality and operating within professional coding, which relate to such questions as visual quality, news and presentational values, televisual quality, professionalism, etc. The professional code is talking about the relationship of dominant code and professional code. Without dominant code, professional code does not exist. Dominant code has to be there. That means the author's intention has to be decoded by the reader from the same perspective. Additionally, it also focuses on the visual quality, the stylistics, images and symbols. And this is only possible by a professional reader. The reader who is professional, that is the reason he is using the code professional code. So the reader has to be a professional one to look at the presentational values, images and symbols. The third one of encoding is called negotiation code. The first one was dominant code. Second one,
Professional.
professional code. Third is negotiated code. It acknowledges the legitimacy of the hegemonic definition to make the grand significations while at more restricted situational level, and it makes its own ground rules. It operates with exceptions to the rule. This coding is like a reader response skill, where a reader has to decode according to his own style. It makes its own ground rules. The reader is totally independent. And the fourth one is the oppositional code. This is also known as globally contrary code. It is possible for a viewer or reader perfectly to understand both literal and connotative inflection given in an event. Hence, he has to find both the meanings, literal meaning and metaphorical meaning. That is the emotional codes given by the author. And he has to determine to decode the masses in a globally contrary way before this masses can have an effect or satisfy a need or to be put in a use. Because once he is getting any masses after decoding, he may use those masses for his own use. उससे इन्फ्लुएंस होके वो उसको कहीं और यूज कर सकता है जो भी मैसेज उसने गेट किया है. So that message must be perceived as a meaningful discourse, and it should be meaningfully decoded, and is only possible by using both the perspective, that is connotative perspective and literal perspective. Metaphorical meaning भी समझना है, जो भी emotional words उसने लिखे हैं उसको भी समझना है, and the literal meaning also to be used. तो 4 कोड हमें याद रखने हैं. What are the 4 codes?
Dominant,
Hegemony,
Dominant code,
negotiated, and
operational
oppositional.
code,
professional, negotiated,
and
oppositional.
Oppositional.
So this was the basic idea of cultural criticism and cultural materialism. Stuart Hall को हमने पढ़ लिया है, and tomorrow we'll be discussing about Raymond Williams. Now I am going to start with Mikhail Bakhtin. Without studying Mikhail Bakhtin, we cannot understand Marxism. So to get the concept of Mikhail Bakhtin is very important. अभी तक हमने जितने literary criticism पढ़े हैं, most of them, or I can say all of them, were fully focused on how to interpret a poetry. Poetry की meaning को कैसे समझना है. But Mikhail Bakhtin was fully focused on understanding the text of a novel. पूरी लाइफ उसने नोवेल को कैसे रीड करना है पूरी लाइफ लगा दिया. Most of his works appeared during 1910 to 1930, but इसकी वर्क को किसी ने ध्यान नहीं दिया. Nobody has paid attention to his work till 1970s. He got popularized, his concepts got accepted only after 1970s. Means I can say after his death, posthumously he got fame. His full name is Mikhail Mikhailovich Bakhtin, also called M.M. Bakhtin, who is a Russian philosopher, literary critic, and thematician. As he is a Russian philosopher, so definitely he has the background of the Russian formalism, because Russian formalism started during 1910. So most of his writing took place during 1910 to 1930. So we can say that he was from the school of Russian formalism. And his book, Towards the Philosophy of the Act, first published in 1986 in the USSR, is regarded as an unfinished work. And after he got too much fame after the publication of this work, Towards the Philosophy of the Act. In this book, Bakhtin stated that the essay was to contain 4 parts. He also introduced architectonic or schematic model of the human psyche, which consists of 3 components. Apart from interpreting how to interpret a novel, he is also concerned with the human psychology. And he has given a very beautiful component, which I personally like very much. The first component is I for myself. उसने कहा कि इस दुनिया में 3 तरह के लोग हैं, 3 तरह के साइकोलॉजी वाले लोग हैं, जिसमें द फर्स्ट वन इज आई फॉर माई सेल्फ. जो पहली कैटेगरी है वो है मेरी दुनिया मेरे ही अंदर है. आई हैव नथिंग टू टेक विद अदर्स. आई एम लिविंग फॉर माई सेल्फ. मैं खुद के लिए जिंदा हूं. आई हैव नॉट टू टेक केयर ऑफ एनीवन. So if you look around yourself, you will find some people like this. The second is I for the other. I am living for the help of other people, philanthropists. So there are the few people who are having the psychology of I for other. And the third is other for me. This is the best psychology I see in some of the people, जिनको लगता है कि पूरी दुनिया मेरे लिए ही है. So you will find some people like this who thinks that everyone around me is there for me only. So he divided the human being in 3 categories: I for myself, I for other, and other for me. And he explained that I for other is the one through which human beings develop a sense of identity. अगर हमें अपने आइडेंटिटी को डेवलप करना है तो वी हैव टू अडॉप्ट द psychology of I for other, means thinking about the goodness of others, philanthropist view to see the people. Are these three components clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
This is very relevant to our society. In Problems of Dostoevsky's Poetics, actually he was making a review of the poems of Dostoevsky. And during that review, he found so many problems. And he wrote a book that included all the problems, and that book is called Problems of Dostoevsky's Poetics. So in that book, he introduced three important concepts. First is the concept of unfinalizable self. According to this concept, a person is never fully revealed to the world. What does it mean? एक ऐसा कॉन्सेप्ट जिसमें जो सेल्फ है वो अपने आप को कभी दुनिया को रिवील नहीं करता है. वन इज नॉट फुली रिवील्ड. वो किसी से कितना भी प्यार मोहब्बत करता हो, कुछ ना कुछ अंदर अपने अंदर छुपा के रखेगा. So this is the concept given by Bakhtin, and what I find is very true. One is never fully revealed to the world, and this is called the concept of unfinalizable self. Concept याद रखना है. We have to remember the concept and what does it mean. The next is the idea of the relationship between self and others. This concept says that every person is influenced by other in an intertwined way. When you read this essay, actually I gone through the entire essay because I liked his ideas very much. So he says that हम अपने दोस्तों से अपने घर में क्या बातें करते हैं? हम वही बातें करते हैं, either we have heard from the news, टेलीविजन पे, और we have read somewhere in the newspaper, या हमने किसी और की बात से सुना है. तो हम वही बातें करेंगे जो हमने ऑलरेडी सुन रखा है. We just communicate to our family members. उसने ये कहा, यहाँ ये लिखा हुआ था, उस न्यूज में ये बताया. These are the things generally we talk. So he says that the person is influenced by the other people in an intertwined way. And the third is concept of polyphony. Actually, he gave two definitions. This polyphony is like when two people are in disagreement. अगर दो लोग आपस में वर्ड फाइटिंग कर रहे हैं, नहीं मैं सही तो मैं सही. So he says that at least one of them must be wrong. अगर दो लोग आपस में झगड़ा कर रहे हैं, दोनों में एक तो कोई जरूर गलत है. So I hope these three concepts are very clear to all of you.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, in his concept of other for me, in it he wanted to say selfishness or dominating nature people have.
Others for me मतलब उनकी साइकोलॉजी ऐसी होती है कि दुनिया में जितने लोग हैं सब मेरे लिए काम करें. It's not like dominating, it's selfishness, you can say.
Okay, sir.
But इन दोनों में डिफरेंस एक तो I for me, वो भी एक सेल्फिशनेस ही है. बट उसको दूसरे से मतलब नहीं है कि दूसरा मेरा काम कर रहा है कि नहीं कर रहा है. बट कुछ लोग ऐसे होते हैं जिनको लगता है कि मेरे आसपास जितने लोग हैं सब मेरे लिए काम करें.
Others should go according to our point of view, like
Yes.
that, sir.
Yes.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
You must have seen some people around you जिनको लगता है भाई मेरा ये काम कर देना. हर रोज उनको यही लगता है कोई मेरा काम कर दे, बट वो किसी का
Yes,
काम
sir.
नहीं करे.
Yes, sir. Definitely.
So these are the very beautiful theories given by Mikhail Bakhtin. These three concepts are also clear to everyone.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
सबने अपने अपने मन में कुछ ना कुछ छुपा के रखा है. The theory of unfinalizable self.
Respect, sir.
सर अभी तक नाम सुना था मिखाइल बख्तिन, लेकिन ऐसा सब कहा है ये नहीं पता था.
Okay. No, he has really given a very beautiful philosophy. अभी हम आगे slides में I'll talk about the more terms. That is really very fantastic. He wrote a very famous book called Dialogic Imagination, which is a collection of essays. That is a collection of 4 essays. And this essays talking about interpretation of the novel. एक novel को किस perspective से interpret करना है. So all those things he has collected in the 4 essays. The title is very important. The first is Epic and Novel, published in 1941. The second is From the Prehistory of Novelistic Discourse in 1940. If you see, the year of publication differs. Forms of Time and of the Crontop in the novel, 1937-1938, and Discourse in the novel, 1934-1935. So you can see that Discourse in the novel appears first, because initially these essays were published serially in the journals. Later on, this was collected by Mikhail Bakhtin in form of a book, जिसमें उसने इस तरह से अरेंज किया है. Epic and novel has given the first preference as the first chapter, first essay. The second is From Prehistory of Novelistic Discourse. Third one, Forms of Time and of the Crontop in the novel, Discourse in the novel. First of all, let's understand the meaning of dialogic. Dialogic means dialogue. If you are going to read any novel, you will find the characters are talking to each other in the novel. They are making a dialogue. Each novel is written in the form of a dialogue where characters talk to each other. But Bakhtin says that these dialogues are interconnected to each other. Means one plot is connected to other plot is connected to other plot. So these are the meanings he has given to understand the meaning of dialogue. The dialogues are interconnected to each other. They have been derived from some other text. The dialogue in a novel has been derived from some other text. In the language of Julia Kristeva, I can say that dialogue is like an intertextuality. किसी भी टेक्स्ट का मीनिंग हैज बीन डिराइव्ड फ्रॉम समवेयर एल्स. जैसे मैंने बताया कि इन आवर लाइफ वी टॉक, whatever we talk has been taken from some sources. So in each novel, the characters are talking their matters that has been taken from some other source. So their dialogues are, we can say, a repeated dialogue. In the dialogic imagination, Bakhtin introduces main 4 concepts: heteroglossia, dialogism, Crontop, and carnivaler. These 4 terms are very, very important. Dialogism, I already explained. The next is dialogic imagination. This is the complete book. The first essay, Epic and Novel, focus on defining the novel by contrasting it to epic. And this first essay, he is telling that novel is far, far superior to epic. The second essay, that is From the Prehistory of Novelistic Discourse, it focuses on the history of the modern novel and explores how different texts in history have been crucial to its development. Hence, how the novel has originated, how it has taken in the modern form, and how it is different from the historical text. Third is forms of time and of the chrontop in the novel. This is the essay where Bakhtin introduces and explores the concept of chrontop. So I'll explain chrontop in detail. Discourse in the novel. This is a very famous essay. This is the last essay which talks about the heteroglossia. So again, I'll explain this heteroglossia in detail. The first essay is important because it talks about the comparison of epic and novel. The first essay was published in 1941. First, it was published in a serial form in a journal, and first published in 1970. It offers an introduction to Bakhtin's comparison of novel to the epic, and he says that what distinguishes the epic is the complete separation of its world from contemporary reality. जो एपिक है, एपिक में कंटेम्पररी रियलिटी का है, जो आज हो रहा है सोसाइटी में, आज की सोसाइटी का एपिक से क्या लेना देना है. So he says that by this separation, this epic is inhuman and ahistorical. So this concept you must remember. This question has been asked many times. What is the view of Mikhail Bakhtin towards epic? He says that epic is separated from the contemporary reality, present reality, postmodern reality. And because of this, it is inhuman and ahistorical. And he says that the novel is everything that epic is not. Novel is alive. Novel is liberating. The novel is carefully defined genre. Novel is freely absorbing other literary things as well as subliterary, extra-literary forms. The novel proves itself as the most omnivorous, fluid, and organic of the genres, and therefore the most resistant to theoretical explanation. So according to Bakhtin, novel is everything and superior to all other genres. Although novel originated only in the 19th century, before that novel was not existing. So he was the first critic who gave the superiority to the novel. Discourse in the novel. Mikhail Bakhtin proposed a couple of ways to interpret and view the novels. And he introduced a dialogue theory that is called heteroglossia in them. He says that the basic condition of human communication is heteroglossia, with the different languages, discourse competing with one another. Dialogism, Bakhtin says that it is the process which meaning is evolved out of interaction among the author, the work, and the reader or the listener. And these elements are affected by the context in which they are placed, that is the social and political context. So what is the dialogue performed by the characters? The next is heteroglossia, a very important term. You must have heard this term earlier. Any idea about this term heteroglossia? Anyone?
Multiple meanings, sir.
Multiple meaning किसका?
Maybe text interpretation.
Interpretation in a different way. Okay.
Mm.
You need to delete this concept and upload the new context.
Sure, sir.
Okay, so heteroglossia, first I'll explain in a layman language. Should I explain in Hindi or English?
Both.
Both? Okay. If you until understand the concept of heteroglossia, You have not understood Mikhail Bakhtin. I'll explain from our personal point of view. We have different relationship in our family. Someone is like a mother, someone is father. And with every relationship, we have to deliver a different discourse. जब हम अपने माँ से बात करते हैं तो हमारे बोलने का स्टाइल थोड़ा अलग होता है. When we are talking to our boss, the way of talking is different. When we are talking to our children, the way of discourse is different, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So each and every time our discourse is changing again and again and again. So don't you think that if you become a character in a novel, will you talk in a flat manner to everyone? अब जैसे करेक्टर है नोवेल में, तो अगर वो किसी नोवेल मैन से बात कर रहा है, किसी राजा से बात कर रहा है, फिर टॉकिंग टू अ किंग, वो उसी लहजे में बात करेगा जैसे वो अपने बेटे से बात कर रहा है? नो. The discourse of a particular character will differ again and again and again. If he is talking to some nobleman, he will talk in a formal way. If he is talking to his family members, he may talk in an informal way. If he is talking to his friend, he may be very unfamiliar way. So जब एक ही कैरेक्टर अलग अलग तरीके से बात करता है, that is called heteroglossia. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Now let us see. This term was introduced by Russian linguist Mikhail Bakhtin in his discourse in the novel. This was the final essay in the dialogic imagination, published in 1934. It describes the coexistence of varieties within a single linguistic code. Single character. Coexistence of varieties in a single linguistic code or single character. एक ही character के different varieties coexisting together in a novel is called heteroglossia. I hope the definition is clear.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Bakhtin argues that the power of the novel originates in the coexistence of and conflict between different types of speech. The speech of characters, speech of narrator, and even the speech of the author. So there are different speeches. He defines heteroglossia as another speech in another's language, serving as to express authorial intention but in a refracted way. अभी ये क्या कह रहा है कि जो ऑथर है, ऑथर के पास इतनी कैपेबिलिटी है क्या कि वो अपने कैरेक्टर को अलग अलग लैंग्वेज बोलने के लिए मजबूर कर सके? Does author think before writing कि now my character is talking to a nobleman, he should be very much polite and very much familiar, he should be formal, so he may slip sometime, author may slip his intentions sometime, but जो character है, the character has to perform its own role. So there may be a difference between the authorial intention and the character's intention. So this is the reason why he says that heteroglossia is another speech in another's language. किसका speech? Author का speech. किसके language में? Character के language में. Author is not speaking. Character is speaking. Author is only making the character speak. So the authorial intention becomes refracted. It involves two voices, two meanings and two expressions. One is of the author and the other is of character. So again there is a mixing of voice. He has to express two voices. एक तो जो author ने उसको बोला है वो, और दूसरा उसका खुद का वॉइस. That means whether he is able to create the same emotion in the reader's mind, जो कि ऑथर ने उसको बोला है क्रिएट करने के लिए. So two voices, two meanings, two expressions. So these two voices are dialogically interrelated. Dialogic interrelation means a person's speech which is composed of languages from diverse social contexts. A character has to talk differently in different cultures. If a character is passing by from one culture to another, जैसे हमने नोवेल में देखा है, most of the novels में setting change हो जाती है, एक कंट्री से दूसरे कंट्री में कैरेक्टर चला जाता है. So when the character is shifted from one country to other country, don't you think that the culture is also getting changed? So in the new culture, he has to talk according to that culture. It does not express a ready-made individuality. Instead, the character emerges in the course of the dialogue and is composed of languages from diverse social contexts. जो character है, he is not ready-made. वो अपने आप को बदलता है according to the diverse social context, diverse cultural context. जो भी culture होगा उसके हिसाब से he will adopt his own language.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Bakhtin is giving a very beautiful
Yes, sir.
explain the term heteroglossia. उसने एक example दिया है एक illiterate farmer का, uneducated farmer, and he says you see how his language differs. उसकी बात जो है कैसे differ कर रही है. In the first part, the farmer is talking to God in the church. So his language is different from his family. When he is talking to his family members in his own peculiar language, local language. उसकी बात जो है God के बात करने से और अपने family member के बात करने से अलग होगी. When he sings a song, that is another type of discourse. And he tries to overbear a high class dialogue when he dictates petition to the local government. अगर वो किसी राजा के पास जाके बातें करता है तो उसका डायलेक्ट है जो वो हाई क्लास का होता है. So every time his discourse is getting changed. So this is called heteroglossia. So we can say that heteroglossia serves two speakers at a time. One is the author and the other is the character, and expresses simultaneously two different intentions. One is of author intention and one is character intention. The direct intention of the character who is speaking and the reflected intention of the author. So these two intentions are simultaneously appearing in front of the reader. Am I clear what is heteroglossia?
Yes, sir.
किसी को कोई doubt so that I can go ahead?
Is it only about author and reader, sir? That multiple meaning.
See, the reader has to find two meanings. एक तो author ने क्या कहा है और इसका character क्या कह रहा है.
Character, yes, yes.
So again there is a heterogeneous meaning. And the reader is confused that one character is using different languages in the different parts of the novel. Because sometimes the author is getting success to express those intentions which the character should create. Like I can give you the best example of King Lear, fool. Sometimes Shakespeare is making fool to speak better language than King Lear. Fool जो है King Lear से भी अच्छी language में बात करता है. So what type of a language a character uses, that decides the heteroglossia. Different languages by a single character, and that languages also differ from एक author का intention, एक character का intention. So there is a heterogeneity. दो चीजें इसमें है. एक तो ऑथर्स का इंटेंशन और कैरेक्टर का इंटेंशन डबल मीनिंग, और दूसरा चीज क्या है, एक ही कैरेक्टर के अलग अलग फॉर्म्स ऑफ डिस्कोर्स। ओके, सो ये दोनों चीजें कंबाइन करके दिस इज कॉल्ड हेटेरोग्लॉसिया।
Thank you, sir. Got it.
Importance of heteroglossia. It brought out race, linguistic, and ethnic diversity because of different discourse. It brought out the diversity in the race, linguistic, and ethnicity. It allows the representation of multiple voices, and it makes the dialogues more realistic and more understandable to a wider audience. The next is polyphony. To understand the difference between polyphony and heteroglossia is very, very important. Polyphony means, let me explain in a layman language first. In our family members, there are different people. Some are highly educated, some are less educated, some are children, some are women, some are men. But do you think that everyone speaks a same level of language? सबका लेवल जो है डिस्कोर्स का एक ही है? Obviously not. A highly educated man talks in a different manner than an uneducated. A male talks in a dominant way in comparison to a female. So, in the novel, the different characters has to talk in a different way. जो जिस प्रोफेशन से है, he has to talk in that way. अगर कोई राजा है and he is talking like a beggar, so that is not a polyphony. So each character has to talk in his own level of language. वो जिस कैटेगरी से बिलोंग करता है उस कैटेगरी का लैंग्वेज उसको बोलना है. So there is a different languages in one novel. जैसे हमारे मोबाइल में पहले फोन हुआ था ना, मोनोफोन्स, पॉलीफोन्स, रिंगटोन्स. Polyphons means different voices in one novel by the different characters. So again, this concept was developed in Problems of Dostoevsky's Poetics. This has been taken from music. Polyphony literally means multiple voices. So Bakhtin reads Dostoevsky's work as containing many different voices unmerged into a single perspective. They're not merged together. क्योंकि सबका अलग अलग अपना अपना लेवल है, that cannot merge. So they are unmerged into a single perspective and they are not subordinated to the voice of the author. Each of these voices has its own perspective, its own validity, its own narrative weight within the novel. सबका अपना अपना perspective है, अपनी validity है. It looks like that the book were written by multiple characters, not a single author's standpoint. So a novel should look like every character is speaking in his own voice. उसका अपना एक अलग identity है. So this polyphony is clear to all. If not clear, kindly say, I'll explain it again.
So you told that one among two people, one should be at least wrong. So how it is connected to polyphony?
See, that was the psychological idea of Mikhail Bakhtin. Okay, उसका और इसका कोई relation नहीं है.
Okay, sir.
This is about interpretation of a novel. और वो एक human psychology की बात कर रहा था.
Okay, sir.
So this heteroglossia and polyphony both are means closely related, but थोड़ा सा difference ये है कि heteroglossia में एक ही character के अलग अलग voice हैं और उसको खुद का भी voice बोलना है और author का भी voice बोलना है.
Yes, sir.
But polyphony में क्या है, different characters has to speak different voices according to their profession, age.
So there is
And-
a not about the author, only characters of the novel.
Only characters,
Okay.
how they are speaking.
Okay, okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
तो जब हम नोवेल पढ़ रहे हैं तो हमें फाइंड आउट करना है कि अगर ये बेगर है तो ये कैसा लैंग्वेज बोल रहा है. इट शुड मैच विथ हिज प्रोफेशन. अगर कोई डॉकरेट है, कोई चोर है, तो व्हाट टाइप ऑफ लैंग्वेज इज यूजिंग. अगर कोई अनएडुकेटेड है, अनसिविलाइज्ड है, व्हाट टाइप ऑफ लैंग्वेज दैट कैरेक्टर इज यूजिंग व्हेन ही इज मेकिंग अ डिस्कोर्स एंड अ डायलॉग इन द नोवेल. The next is chronotop. This is appeared in the third essay, that is called Forms of Time and of the Chronotop in the novel. The chronotop has been borrowed from Einstein's theory of relativity and literally means time space. Chronotop का मतलब ही होता है time and space का relationship. Time and physical space. But when we are talking about the novel, space means the validity of the dialogue. अगर कोई करेक्टर किसी दूसरे करेक्टर से एक पेज तक उसका डिस्कशन चल रहा है, that is called the time. How much time he is consuming to explain his discourse. और जो उसने discourse किया, what is the validity of that discourse? If I talk about one of the novel of Samuel Beckett, Waiting for Godot. So when you read the novel, at the end of the novel, you will find the validity of the entire novel is useless. There is no validity. But you have consumed the full time. So this is called time. If we talk about a literal meaning of the space, so this literal meaning is the physical space. Like a man who is driving on the road, he want to spend minimum time on the road. To physical space, he does not want to enjoy the physical space. मैं तेजी से चला के घर पहुंच जाऊं. Time and space relationship. There is one poem by Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken, which talk about the enjoying of the physical space. Here, the narrator of the poem is not selecting any of the road because he wants to enjoy the nature. So he is consuming the full time to enjoy the physical space, the beauty of the physical space. But here, when we are talking about the interpretation of the novel, space represents the validity of the discourse. Literary example is Thomas Stoppart's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. These two important friends of Hamlet, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, are not given time in the play Hamlet. They got the space, they have got their name, they have got a physical space in the play, but they are not given time. And that time was given by Tom Stoppard when he wrote Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. So they have got time and space in Tom Stoppard's novel, although they have not got the time in Hamlet. तो हेमलेट में इनकी जितनी कहानी होती है, that in the back of the veil, ये सारी पर्दे के पीछे होती है. Now see how Bakhtin defines chronotop. This is the language given by Bakhtin. He says that we will give the name chronotop, which really means time and space, to the intrinsic connectedness of temporal and spatial relationships that are artistically expressed in literature. So chronotop is the relationship between time and space. This term is employed in mathematics and was introduced by Einstein's theory of relativity. The special meaning it has in relative theory is not important for our purpose. We are borrowing it for the literary criticism almost as a metaphor. What counts for us is the fact that it expresses the inseparability of space and time. Space or time both are inseparable, and he is talking time as the fourth dimension of space. In the literary artistic chronotop, spatial and temporal indicators are fused into one carefully thought out as a concrete whole. So have you got some idea about chronotop?
Not exactly, sir.
See, इसमें दो चीजें हैं. एक तो टाइम. टाइम मीन्स एक कैरेक्टर किसी डिस्कोर्स को बोलने में कितना टाइम दे रहा है. जो ऑथर है उसको कितना टाइम दे रहा है. जितना ज्यादा टाइम देगा वो कैरेक्टर उतना ही इंपॉर्टेंट होगा.
Okay.
And the second is space. के स्पेस की बात हो रही है. One is the physical space and the other is validity of using those time. जो उसको टाइम मिला है अपने बात रखने का, तो उसमें उसका क्या वैलिडिटी है. Whether it's a meaningful expression or it's totally absurd. तो यहाँ दो स्पेस की बात हो रही है. One is the physical space, कि उसको कितना स्पेस मिला है, वो कितनी बार नोवेल में आ रहा है.
Okay,
बहुत सारे कैरेक्टर ऐसे होते हैं कि एक जगह नजर आए उसके बाद गायब हो गए. So they did not get the time to express themselves. और जब टाइम नहीं मिला तो एक्सप्रेस कहाँ से करेंगे.
ओके. टाइम एंड स्पेस मींस उनको बोलने का कितना टाइम दिया गया और स्पेस वो कितनी बार नॉवल में शो हो रहे हैं.
Yes. So both are interrelated to each other.
ओके.
जितना टाइम मिलेगा वो उतना बोलेगा.
तो ऑटोमेटिक स्पेस मिल गया सर उसको वो तो.
Yes. So both are interrelated to each other. And he adds another meaning कि जब उसको स्पेस मिला तो the meaning that he has given उसकी वैलिडिटी क्या है. जो उसने बातें बोली whether it's absurd or meaningful.
हाँ, ये भी तो हो सकता है सर. डायलॉग उसके ऐसे दिए गए हों जो अब्सर्ड होंगे.
हाँ, like waiting for Godot.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, next is carnivalesque. This is the last concept. I am worried that you are getting late. Should I finish it?
Yes.
Okay. So carnivalesque. Carnival का मतलब क्या होता है? Carnival is a type of festival.
Festival.
This festival is especially related to the Christian people. So they used to celebrate, starting from the ancient time. In the ancient time, they used to celebrate the carnivals using different masks. और उस मास्क में they used to create a contrast. उसमें जो high class के लोग होते थे, they used to play the role of poor people. The poor people used to play the role of higher class people, and they used to enjoy in their own way. And carnival में everybody is free to do anything. किसी को कोई restriction नहीं है. There is no police around them. कि भाई तुम्हें drinking नहीं करना है, तुम्हें smoking नहीं करना है. They are totally free. Whatever they want to do, they are totally free. There is no authority to control those carnivals, those characters who are performing. Like Mela. When you go to some fair, you will find everybody is enjoying their own way. Someone is enjoying on the ride, someone is enjoying on the food stalls. So carnival is also like that, where everyone is free to do anything. So those freedom of the carnivals was taken by Mikhail Bakhtin in the novel. Let us see. Carnivalesque originated as a carnival in Mikhail Bakhtin's Problem of Dostoevsky's Poetics, but it was further developed in Rabelais and his world. although it finds its origin and problems of Dostoevsky's poetics, but actually it was explained in Rabelais and his world. This is an essay by Mikhail Bakhtin. So it is a very important point. कौन सा concept कौन से वर्क में appear हुआ है, that is very important. तो ये जो है dialogic imagination के बाहर का है, and problems of Dostoevsky's poetics, Rabelais and his world, in which it was developed and explained fully. He said that the carnival is not a performance and does not differentiate the spectator from the performer. Carnival में कोई एक spectator नहीं होता है. Everyone is enjoying as a performer. There is no spectator. Every performer is enjoying his own way. So the carnival for Bakhtin is an event in which all the rules, inhibitions, restrictions, and regulations which determine the course of everyday life are suspended. जितने restrictions हैं, जितने rules and regulations हैं, वहाँ सारे suspended. And especially all form of hierarchy in the society is also suspended. वहाँ पे कोई बड़ा नहीं है, कोई छोटा नहीं है. Everyone is free. Bakhtin notes that the carnival was confined in time, not in space. Space means the physical is too much. Only the problem is the confinement with the time. It penetrated the house as well. Carnival जो है house में भी घुसा. Means the people inside the house are also free to perform their own way. घर में जो है वो अपने हिसाब से काम कर रहा है. And did not exist just in the public sphere or the town square, but the town square and the adjacent streets were the central site of the carnival. They embodied and symbolized the carnivalesque idea of being universal and belonging to all the people. जो टाउन और स्ट्रीट्स में कार्निवल्स होते थे, दे आर रिगार्डेड एज द यूनिवर्सल कार्निवल. जो घर के अंदर कार्निवल हो रहा है वो यूनिवर्सल नहीं है. So those carnivals which are taking place on the streets and the towns, they are called the universal carnival. That belongs to all people. Everyone can participate in that carnival. Although he considered a number of literary forms and individual writers, it is Francois Rabelais, who is a French author of Gargantua and Pantagruel. This is the name of the book by French author Francois Rabelais. और दूसरा 19th century author Fyodor Dostoevsky. These two authors are the primary examples of carnivalization in literature. इन दोनों authors ने carnival को अपने work में adopt किया है. So the names are important: Francois Rabelais and Fyodor Dostoevsky. This is the figure of a carnivalesque when where people wear masks and they perform different roles, and they are free to do anything. There is no political or authorial control over them. So Bakhtin offers 4 categories of what he calls a carnivalistic sense of the word. First is free and familiar interaction between people. जो कार्निवल में लोग हैं, they are free and familiar interaction. They are meeting with each other familiarly. So in the carnival, normally separated people can interact and freely express themselves to one another. The second is eccentric behavior. Eccentric behavior का मतलब एक ऐसा behavior that is not socially accepted. So they are doing an eccentric behavior. They are free to do any type of behavior, whether it's an accepted behavior or not accepted. कोई रो रहा है, कोई चिल्ला रहा है, they are doing everything whatever they want. कोई पी के टल्ली है, like that, eccentric behavior. The third is carnivalistic miscellanies. Means they are not connected to each other. The free and familiar attitude of the carnival enables everything which is normally separated to connect, the sacred with the profane, the old and new, the high and low. So like that, they are connected to each other. जैसे मैंने बताया कि जो high graded people हैं, they perform like a poor, the old people perform like a child. And the fourth one is sacrilegious. Sacrilegious means making parody or making mocking of everything. किसी भी चीज को satire बनाना. So the sight of ungodliness, of blasphemy, profanity, parodies on the things that are sacred. जो पवित्र चीजें हैं, जो sacred चीजें हैं, उनको गंदा करना. Ungodliness, because they are free to do anything. Now, how it is connected to our literature? So, a novel is a carnivalesque novel if the first characteristic is there is a reversal of hierarchy. Everything is contrasting for a time being. When a character is performing like a King Lear fool, as I said that sometimes fool speaking in a higher language, higher level language than the King Lear. So there is a reversal of hierarchy. So we have to find where there is hierarchy. Second is eccentric behavior. If any character in the novel is behaving which is not socially accepted, then that is a carnivalesque novel. Non-linear of narration. जैसे एक तो हमारा नरेशन होता है कि each plot is connected to everyone. एक plot खत्म होता है, दूसरा उससे connected, तीसरा उससे connected. But there are few novels like Tristram Shandy और Waiting for Godot, जिसमें पूरा नोवेल पढ़ लो, कुछ मीनिंग समझ नहीं आएगा कि ये नोवेल कहना क्या चाह रहा है. Non-linear pattern of narration. Fourth one is celebration of freedom, equality and abundance. जैसा हमने कार्निवलस्क में देखा था, कार्निवल में देखा था कि there is a freedom for everyone to celebrate. So same in the novel, if there is a celebration of freedom, there is a freedom of equality, जिसमें बड़ा छोटा सब एक जैसे हैं. So they are regarded as a carnival novel. यहाँ तक कोई डाउट कार्निवलस्क में? Any doubt in carnivalesque?